What's up, guys? Welcome to the Underscore Podcast with your host, Andrew Erickson. You can find me on Twitter at @AndrewErickson_. And today I'm joined by a very special guest to the pod. He was on last summer where we talked about his book, Sean Ryan. What is up, my friend?
Oh, man, I'm just kind of, we mentioned off the air, but I am actually already starting to work on the book for this season, the 2020 Fantasy Football Almanac. So I've been deep into numbers. I have 2 teams left to kind of dig into in the NFC West. So I as Bill Belichick would say, I'm on to 2020.
I love it. So, yeah, guys, if you don't remember, we had Sean on, I think it was in either June or July, actually. It was like looking back through our Twitter conversations about it. And we talked about his almanac, basically kind of outlining, or previewing the 2019 season. And I thought it'd be a fun activity, kind of have Sean come back on the show, talk about the almanac a little bit, talk about things that he's adding to the 2020 edition. And then at the same time, look back at some of the takes and just see, hey, did we hit on this and what can we learn from it? So we'll start with the almanac. So, sure. Sean, for those that don't remember the 2019 version, what is it, first of all? And then, what can people expect for 2020?
Yeah, sure. So my theory on fantasy sports, and I know there are a lot of, especially with daily fantasy now, there are a lot of people that are, super high into any information they can get, any analytics they can get. And one of my problems, and the reason I started writing the book, is I never really saw the information compiled in the way that I wanted it to. And then also, if you're on your way to the draft and you just need a list of player names, you pick up a magazine, and through the publication cycles, these grocery store magazines that you pick up for $5 or $10 or whatever it is, it's all stale information. It's all like pre-training camp information. So my goal coming in was to really kind of make it more of an information/stat service. I analyze offenses. That's something that's not really out there. I created, or at least I think I created, the opportunity ranking. Although since my book has been published, I've noticed it other places. I don't know if I copied someone or if they copied me, but for purposes of this show, Andrew, let's say I created it. I don't know, but I do.
The founder, the one and only.
Yeah, that's right. So what I do, my theory again for fantasy sports is a lot of this stuff is based on opportunity, and David Johnson is a great case study for that. And I've been down on David Johnson the last couple of years. Of course, I'm going to give you an example where I'm right off the bat, right? But when Bruce Arians left, the system's changed. Carson Palmer's gone. Suddenly you have Josh Rosen 2 years ago. Suddenly your offensive line is awful, and you're transitioning offenses again to Cliff Kingsbury's system where it's more heavily pass-based. So I've been down on David Johnson. Case in point, another one, Le'Veon Bell. I did not like him moving to New York Jets and playing under Adam Gase. And so, when I look at teams, I really study the offensive play caller for the skill positions, and then I also study the defensive play caller for team defense and individual, defensive rankings as well. So it's more about scouting. I call it a fantasy sports scouting service, and then also I update. So my book this year I think is going to be out in April, give or take. I finally recruited somebody special to edit. Andrew, I think you know this gentleman. So hopefully we can get the book out right by April.
Yeah, we'll get it out.
Yeah.
It'll be out.
And so this year, if you don't mind, I'll say what I'm adding. I'm adding, since it's coming out in April, more stuff for Dynasty, right? Off-season trades. Who can you buy on low? I'm going to have some analytics in support of, who are the players that should break out? Who are the players that could break out? Which I'm still working on, so I don't have any of that stuff prepared yet, but I have a lot of good ideas. I just don't want to commit. I'm going to have an expanded NFL rookies section as well. And then I'm also doing something that I haven't seen anywhere else. Again, maybe it exists out there, but I'm putting down, or I'm putting numbers into place to let people know how big of a percentage of the fantasy points come from the roster. So you'll see stats for, let's say Lamar Jackson accounted for X% of touchdowns for the Baltimore Ravens. What I'm doing is, this person accounted for X% of the overall skill player points. And I will include quarterbacks in there. When I get to Lamar Jackson, and when you see it, Andrew, you're going to laugh at how dominant he was even against his own skill players. I think he accounted for I think it was 17% of the skill players' offense, not even including his passing numbers. It's just he was insane last year. So a lot of cool stuff coming down the line, and I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, no, that sounds really cool, and especially things that are more graphically appealing. We live in a very short attention span type of life now, so it's hey, pictures, videos, graphics, those are things that are all plus. Gotta love it. So let's talk about a little bit. So segueing a little bit. So you mentioned Lamar Jackson. He was firing on all cylinders last year. But there was another quarterback that was also firing on all cylinders, and he wasn't even the starter from week 1. And I remember reading in the 2019 Almanac, like, Marcus Mariota was the starter. He was a starter like all off season, and there wasn't really much in the media. There wasn't really like, hey, they're gonna bench him. But like, you straight out wrote like, Mariota's trash. Like, Ryan Tannehill is gonna be the starter. I remember I highlighted it. I was like, how do you like? Why? I was like, I mean, Mariota wasn't like coming in like, people weren't super high on Mariota, but I was like, I mean, Tannehill's he's not that good. But like, I mean, dude, like, I mean, I was what Tannehill just did this whole season was like beyond anything I would have thought of.
Yeah, that was interesting and funny story. So like, I came out pretty strong, and I'm not like a hot take guy. I think you would know. Yeah, you know that, Andrew. I know. But if you picked up the book, I'm not a big hot take guy. But if I feel like I'm right about something and I'm frustrated at an argument in the I guess the public atmosphere, I'll come out pretty hard against it. And I don't know. I can't remember the words I used, but I said something like how many 13 touchdown 11 interception seasons do we need to see before you move on from the guy? And I think my argument coming in to the 2019 season, but back last summer, was Marcus Mariota. Like, the Tennessee Titans are ready to compete, and they're a strong team. Their defense is always strong. They can run the ball. And the only thing holding them back is they have a quarterback that can't throw for more than 115 yards a game. And he can't stretch the field. He's never been able to show that he can stretch the field. And he is what he is. And that's not a bad thing. But to me, he had backup written all over him. And when I came out and I had some stuff on my YouTube channel, I got death threats over that take. I really literally got death threats. It was like my first ever public figure death threat. And I was just like, oh, okay. Marcus Mariota, really? Tennessee Titans, right? But those Titans, man, they love their quarterback, I guess. But getting to Ryan Tannehill specifically, what I liked about him is like he's not a sexy player, right? I think he came out in that same draft as RG3 and Russell Wilson and Andrew Luck. I think he was around the 10th to 20th pick, somewhere around there. And he's just been a guy that has consistently put up 300-yard games. He doesn't have a really bad touchdown to interception ratio. He can push the ball downfield. We saw what he did with Jarvis Landry when Adam Gase was the coach in Miami. And I thought, man, if you put him there, well, first of all, he was the next best option because I thought he had already proven to be himself a better starter than Mariota. But I thought, man, you give him like Derrick Henry, some of these young receivers, that offensive line that we know can block. I think he could be good. And Tannehill did actually, similarly to Carson Wentz, Carson Wentz kind of put Philadelphia in position to get in the playoffs, but hasn't really finished a playoff game. Tannehill was the same thing. Adam Gase took and Tannehill teamed up to take Miami to the playoffs, but Tannehill, I think, blew out his knee in week 17 or something like that year. So I knew he had won some games. I knew he could throw the ball. And I think Tennessee needed that component where they had a quarterback back there that was fit and comfortable with taking a shot 35, 40 yards downfield and not throwing an interception. And Mariota hasn't been that guy. And, Tannehill, I guess, feather in my cap, that ended up being a nice take. But, I certainly had a not so nice take this year too. So you take the good with the bad, and we consistently finish up. That's what we like to do, right?
Exactly. You just got to finish a little bit more. You got to hit more than you miss, and that's fine. And I just pulled out the 2019 Almanac. I had it in my desk. I just pulled it out. I just want to quote from the Tennessee Titans section about the quarterback. So we have. And I highlighted this sentence. I don't like either of these quarterbacks, but I'm assuming Tannehill will win the job by the end of camp. Tannehill has proven his ability to consistently complete passes downfield. Mariota improved his completion percentage to 68% last year, but he's thrown for 24 touchdowns in 29 starts. That's bad.
24. That's a good stat, right? 24 touchdowns, 29 starts in 2019 football. Come on, man. And that's funny. I don't like either quarterback. And you know what shocked me? So this was obviously after our interview in the last time we was on the pod. Like, Vrabel came out either right before or early in training camp and said we are moving forward with Mariota, and I thought, ugh. I heard that right before the team previews, and I went on a rant, and that was the famous rant where I got a couple death threats, like 1 or 2 death threats. But I don't think Tennessee Titans fans are begrudging me too much on that take now after seeing what kind of they did. And let me tell you, man, what was he? He was like 9-3 or 9-4 if you include the playoffs, I think. And their red zone percentage when he was in there was over 90%. I have never seen anything like it. I saw that stat because I like my stats every now and then. I saw it, and I was like, that cannot be right. And I went back and actually looked and checked the stat because I thought I was getting bad information. It was insane, their red zone percentage. And if a team can score every time, and you got Derrick Henry, and that I think it's Arthur Smith, right? Their offensive coordinator after LaFleur left. What a job that guy did. That Titans team, man, if they can re-sign Henry and Tannehill, I think they're the class of the division. No disrespect to Houston, but I really think Tennessee is gonna go on a little bit of a run. Not to say that Tannehill's an All-Pro every year, but he can get it done.
Yeah, but I mean, the biggest credit that we have to give to Ryan Tannehill is obviously escaping the grasps of Adam Gase, who we've seen multiple players just flourish without Adam Gase, and then other players hinder at his mere appearance. So we'll mention one guy. So Mike Gesicki. So this is a tight end that you were relatively higher on than I think consensus. And he virtually did nothing his rookie year. Right. And this past year, he definitely showed a little bit more. He was on the streaming radar. And I think that Gesicki was a good player to look at. And I think that with Gesicki, the conversation is kind of going to go to, so most people are probably going to end up taking Devontae Parker as kind of that number one receiving option. And then, so then the other two options, you have Mike Gesicki at tight end, and then you have Preston Williams, who was that rookie, the undrafted rookie, that was doing really well before he got hurt. So when I look at it, I mean, I see I think that I'd almost rather target, look at a guy like Gesicki because it's tight end, and it's just it's so hard to find any decent tight ends. Whereas Preston Williams, I might be able to get. You may be able to get him or another receiver like him somewhere else. Whereas Mike Gesicki, hey, does he have upside as a top end tight end? Probably great athletic profile. And if he's used more in the offense, and if Devontae Parker, somewhat comes back to kind of what we normally see from him, I think Gesicki would be a good option. But I guess, what do you kind of look at when you look at Gesicki for next year?
Yeah, I mean, and I'm still kind of in the numbers on that, and my jury is a little bit out because one of the things I'm going to do, which I haven't completed yet, is the true offensive system analysis, and I have to wait. Well, actually, I don't have to wait now. I just have some things in front of it. So Gesicki, coming into last year, my thought was, he was a first-round pick, and usually tight ends that are first-round picks can play. But he just, sometimes you mentioned Gase, right? Sometimes players just don't jive with Gase or vice versa. I don't know what it is. Now Martellus Bennett, when Gase was in Chicago, did well. Gesicki, maybe he couldn't block. Maybe he wasn't picking up Gase's system the way he wanted to. He just didn't get the opportunity. And so when the guy, and forgive me, I can't remember the Miami Dolphins coaching staff, but I know they hired a defensive guy from Miami last year, and he brought in an offensive coordinator also. He hired a guy from New England. Brought in an offensive coordinator from New England, and I knew that, and I saw in press and everything, I knew they were going to try to install basically that Jeff McDaniels system. So I knew that needed a tight end, and I figured he'd get more opportunity. I would be honest, I was higher than most of the people. I was probably a little too high on him. I think that was, at least through the first 8 games of the season, I think that was a miss. But he came alive with Fitzmagic there, and the last few games of the year, he was actually regularly seeing the end zone. So I like his prospects for next year. What I'm not familiar with yet is I believe Chan Gailey is now the offensive coordinator there. Chan Gailey's kind of an older school guy, so I think it's probably going to work out just fine for him. But I need to dig in and really see what his play calling is going to be like. I go back into years and years and years of offensive, basically systems that Gailey's been in charge of, and I want to know a little bit more. But like I said, I'm pretty high on him, and I actually think he's going to be on the rise next year. But I want to confirm it with some data.
Yeah, no, I like that take for sure. And I know that traditionally we see a lot with these older coaches that they tend to do what they do. They don't necessarily hey, we're going to do something totally different. Unless you're Mike McCarthy and you've been, in the barn studying analytics for the past year. Yeah.
So I like that, in the barn. That's good.
I'm really interested to see how that works out, because it's it's one thing when you really need to press home a message that you're like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. It's like, okay, like, all right, you made it quite clear. Just like when a team is like, hey, this is our quarterback, he's our starter. It's like, why are you telling us that if you're so like sure that it's like you never see Belichick come up and be like, yeah, Brady's going to start.
Yeah.
Like, dude, like, no way. Like, of course he is.
Yeah, right.
So, all right, so let's get away from quarterbacks, tight ends. Let's get to the better positions in fantasy. So running backs, receivers. So we'll mention one running back, and I only brought him up because we were messaging back and forth about him. So Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon, just because like as a quick overview, his 2019 season basically was in the beginning of the season he was pretty terrible.
Yeah.
The first 5 weeks it was a mess. The Bengals tried to mess around, and they started a rookie quarterback whose name is escaping me.
Ryan Finley, I believe.
Yeah.
I know that because as the writer of the Almanac, and I was high on Mixon, and I'll get into this, but when he went to Finley, I was like, oh crap, now this prediction is going to look really bad.
But he actually, ended up finishing the season pretty well. And it really was on the back of a lot of volume.
I know.
It was basically like the Bengals were like, hey, like we just want to get the number 1 pick. We're just going to run the ball 30 times a game and just go home.
Yeah, I know. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful thing, at least for some of the fantasy owners. So another kind of funny story on that. So, I usually send an end of season email to everybody who signs up for like the free updates. And that's part of the guide too. I always give direct access to in-season stuff. It's not a service you pay for. If you buy the book, I give you a promo code and you get direct access, right? And so at the end of the season, I send an email to everybody and say, hey, hope you had a great season. Just to kind of touch base. The next book already working on, blah, blah, blah. I had one guy reply to me because he got Mixon, and I think he drafted Mixon in the first round, which I said, and again, that was too high in retrospect. But we were chatting about this, Andrew, and he had, I can't remember the exact numbers, but I ran them, so I know they're pretty close to this. I think he averaged about 33 yards from scrimmage in the first 8 games, 33 yards from scrimmage, and I think he might have had 2 or 3 touchdowns. In the last 8 games, he averaged 124 yards per scrimmage, and I think he either got 5 or 8 touchdowns or something like that. So he was actually probably a top 10 back. I need to look and everything, but I think he was a top 10 back the back half of the season. And everything to me pointed to Mixon getting volume, but the Bengals were so bad defensively that the run game was just taken out of it the first few weeks of the season. But what really shocked me is not only with Joe Mixon, but Gio Bernard, them being down so much, they would not include them in the passing game. And that was really, to be frank with you, it was really pissing me off because I made even if Joe Mixon's not getting the carries, I get that. He should be getting touches. He's one of their best players in the in the organization. So I was a little perturbed. Thankfully, he did so well at the end of the season that it doesn't make that one look as bad. But there are a lot of fantasy owners that probably gave up on him the first half of the season. Anybody who was patient enough to stick with him, though, they were certainly rewarded in the playoffs because he really went on a tear at the end of the year.
Yeah, no, I have Joe Mixon in a dynasty league, so it was tough getting through like the beginning of the last season, but now I'm really excited for 2020 because he's getting a bunch of offensive linemen back. He's still super young, and he's gonna have a much better quarterback. He's gonna have Joe Burrow. So the offense as a whole is gonna mesh better. And the thing is, I know Joe Mixon's already good. It's not about, I'm not questioning his talent. It's like the Bengals, they were already the worst team in the league. If they're literally the worst team again, okay, so he'll be RB1.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
All right, I can deal with that. So let's go to our last guy here. So Courtland Sutton. So in your 2019 Almanac, I highlighted this section too. So 70 catches, 1,000 yards, and 8 touchdowns. Sounds about right depending on the quarterback, wide receiver health. That would make Courtland Sutton a wide receiver 2 in 2019. So Courtland Sutton, I'm just looking at his stats right now. So he finished with 72 receptions, 1,112 yards, and he had how many touchdowns? I'm trying to see what this says. And he had 6 touchdowns.
What did I predict in the touchdowns?
You had 8. Touchdowns. You were two off on receptions. You were 100 yards under, and then 2 touchdowns over.
How about that? Yeah, you brought him up. I know you mentioned Courtland Sutton, but it's funny.
That was with a million different quarterbacks playing, and also the trade of Emmanuel Sanders. Because in your book, you obviously didn't predict he was going to get traded, and you still had Sanders, 70 catches, 800 yards, 4 touchdowns. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's an interesting one. And I liked, gosh, I can't even remember. He's already gone, the play caller there. I could never get the guy's name right. I apologize to him. But it was interesting watching that Denver offense last year. And Sutton, I mean, he's a big dude. He's a big, physically imposing player. And, last year they traded Demaryius Thomas, so they must have liked him, right? And then 2 years ago they traded Demaryius Thomas. Last year they traded Emmanuel Sanders in the middle of the season. And suddenly Denver's left with like Deshaun Hamilton and Tim Patrick, who, by the way, I'm sure, I hope to be back on this program. Tim Patrick, I already started, like I said, looking at those numbers. In limited action, he was surprisingly a big part of that offense. So he could be a breakout guy too. Like I said, I'll dig into it more. But Courtland Sutton, with the poo-poo platter of quarterbacks last year, taking Drew Locke out of the equation there. Very interesting. Now, I thought that they would run the ball a little bit more effectively. I didn't love the play calling. I felt like maybe that offensive coordinator wasn't quite ready for that level of responsibility. And maybe the Denver Broncos agree because he's not back. But yeah,
yeah, exactly. They agree with you.
What was really interesting too about, at least it interested me. I have I don't know if you can see, Andrew, but in my set behind me, I have like all the replica little small Rydell helmets. Yep. And I always, because I'm I don't know, weird this way, I always put them in division order, like in terms of whatever. And so I was looking, and I just, in my head, I figured, okay, Oakland finished behind Kansas City, but on percentage points or on tiebreakers, Denver actually finished ahead of Oakland in the division. And I was like, how is that even possible? But Denver just went on a run, especially with Locke at the end of the year. They're going to be interesting. And you probably remember too in my manual that I think I had Denver as the number 2 defense coming into the season. And then they lost Bradley Chubb in like a key, like defensive tackle in short order. And it was out of there. But Bradley Chubb is a guy that they're saying was going to be like Khalil Mack in that system. And he went down so early. And that defense actually rebounded and finished pretty well at the end of the year too. So Denver is a very sneaky good team. Nobody's going to be talking about them. And, I know I've already seen some stuff about, the Denver, they need a quarterback, so maybe they'll draft a quarterback. I think Locke was something like 3-1 or 5-1 to end the year. I mean, he had pretty good numbers. So I'm going to be keeping real close eye on them, especially when I dig into what the system's going to look like there. I think we could actually have not only, certainly Cortland Sutton, but we could have Tim Patrick pop, depending on the system. We could have Phillip Lindsay, who I don't think has been used correctly, in my opinion. I think they need to use him more in the screen game. If he gets more receptions, that dude is like electric. So, and Locke. I mean, we could have a lot of really quality starters coming out from Denver next year. Should be interesting.
Yeah, no, I think like very early like projections and predictions. Like I think Drew Locke is one of those guys, like a late round quarterback that I'm going to try to target in a lot of leagues. I think that he just has a type of moxie about him, and he has a big arm, and it's like you're playing in a division with the Chiefs, and it's like, hey, like, the Chiefs are going to put up points. Like, we need a quarterback that's going to sling it, and it's like, go out there and like, because it's like, are you going to shut down Patrick Mahomes? Or are you going to win a shootout? Like, you gotta like, those are the two like paths that you have to take when you play the Chiefs, and obviously they play in the same division. So,
and I gotta say, if I built a defense to stop the Kansas City Chiefs, it would be the 49ers defense, right?
Right, yeah.
And we saw what happened. Like, you cannot. The big. I'm sure you didn't see this, but I did a preview, and I said, the biggest question for you. I was having trouble making a pick in the game. And I said the biggest question is I've never seen Mahomes face off against a defensive lineman quite like Nick Bosa. And my thing is like, I know the 49ers are going to get pressure, and Mahomes is going to be slippery enough to escape. And so Bosa is going to be chasing after Mahomes. Is Bosa going to make that tackle, or is Mahomes going to slip away? And we saw Mahomes slip away a couple times. And that was, I think, probably just as much of a factor as that 44-yard completion to Tyreek Hill or the missed pass from Garoppolo to Emmanuel Sanders with 90 seconds left. Man, and I love Bosa, by the way, so let me throw that out there.
Awesome. And you have the Broncos bringing in, obviously, Pat Shurmur as their OC.
Oh, yes. Shurmur.
Rick Scangarello. I think Shurmur's not like a good head coach, but like as an offensive coordinator, he's like done a lot. He's been much better in that role.
Yeah, he was behind the Vikings with Case Keenum. a couple years ago. He's kind of like North Turner in that way. Like maybe not head coach material, but certainly brings it to the offensive coordinator level. I love that hire. I like Pat Shurmur quite a bit. So, yeah, I can't wait to kind of look into the personnel and see how those line up.
Yeah, so that should be fun. Yeah, Denver's a team to definitely keep an eye on. I think, especially in the draft, if they go out and like add another, dynamic, wide receiver,
Agreed.
like something like that. Especially with this wide receiver class, that's totally stacked. It should be fun. But yeah, it's going to conclude the podcast, the recording for today. Sean, do you have anything else that you want to share with the people?
No, other than, Andrew, you're going to be helping me edit, so you're going to get a lot of you're going to get hit over the head with some analytics and stuff. So I'm sure there's going to be some content. Love to come back at some point. Love to have you on Underdog TV. And I guess I should plug that too. So youtube.com/theunderdog is kind of where I put a lot of my content out there. We're going to be doing a lot of NFL draft stuff. Hopefully, guys like Andrew come on the channel and do some stuff as well. But I've already found a number of very interesting things, some breakout candidates and everything, and I haven't even begun to really dig into the numbers. So I'm really looking forward to 2020, and hopefully there isn't a labor stoppage. That would be awful.
Yep. But yeah, that's going to conclude it. It is a couple days after the Super Bowl, and we're already talking fantasy for 2020. This is what it's all about.
Yep.
So again, thanks guys for listening. Again, check me out on Twitter at Andrew Erickson _. Make sure you follow Sean as well. Sean, just plug your Twitter.
Oh yeah, I'm at TFS _Sean. So that's SEAN, the Irish way.
The Irish way is the only way.
That's right.
All right. Thanks for listening, guys.
Thanks.